All right, thanks for joining us today at Creative Mornings. Honestly, I really have trouble with the whole term of creative mornings because to me that does not make any sense. I was talking to Corey and he actually said he feels creative in the morning, which I'm taking his word for it, but it's hard to imagine. Creative evenings, yes, but not creative mornings. But I'm super glad that you guys invited me, and thanks so much to Lyft for putting this on and for our sponsors. I'm really looking forward to it. So today I want to talk to you about chaos and how working backwards can help you, how creative chaos can be part of our success in business, and it can also be opening up a new way to create artistically. Okay, so how do you guys define chaos? I'd like to know how does anyone have a definition of chaos? Corey? Okay, yeah, exactly. Yeah, your house, yep, your cars. So yeah, I mean, this is a dictionary definition of it here. It's a condition or a place of great disorder or confusion. So I think the way that we define chaos is critical to how we're going to handle it. Sorry, our attitudes and what we think about chaos. And in some cases, maybe what's chaos for you is actually order for somebody else. So for today's purposes, though, I'd like to put forward a kind of a specialized definition of chaos, and I call it chaosmos. So it's kind of an ordered chaos. Complex information that can inspire ideas and also inspire art and visual stuff. But it can also work with other art forms. So over the years, chaos has become my best buddy, much like it has with Bob Dylan, or did with Bob Dylan. Chaos is a scary thing. So we're a culture that likes to have control, and the notion of chaos threatens our comfortable lives. We usually orchestrate our lives to run as smoothly as possible, minimal chaos. But I believe being open to chaos can actually improve our creative life and our personal life. For me, my first attraction to chaos began when I was a little kid, and I began incorporating a lot of chaos into my drawings. And I would draw all the time. Then later on in life, I remember I was working as an iron worker, and I had kind of a breakthrough moment where I was working up on a roof, and I thought, hey, I could make a canvas full of chaos, and I could pull enormous amounts of useful information and meaningful art out of that chaos. At least I thought I could. Then I got back to Vancouver, and I tried it out on one canvas, and it worked surprisingly well. So then ever since then, I've been doing that same kind of a method of using chaos. And also, since I started with the painting of it, now I've realized you can actually use chaos to generate like real-world applications, useful inventions and things like that. Because I'm so obsessed with chaos, this one guy on the internet nicknamed me the Chaos Whisperer. So I'm rolling with that now, and I've even got my kids to start calling me that a little bit and stuff, so instead of Dad. So I notice kids are open to stuff like that. They can kind of accept some chaos and roll with it quicker than adults. Sometimes as adults we start blocking it out too much and getting a little bit too orderly. So today we're looking at three main concepts: embracing mystery, working backwards, and harnessing creative chaos. When people usually see my art, they usually either react with confusion, recognition, or some kind of an interest, but it almost always includes a comment along the lines of, did you mean to do that? Or was that an accident? Or what spilled on there, right? And so for me, that question is such an important question because it raises a whole bunch of other philosophical questions. Questions like, are we here on this planet by chance, or is there a grand design to the universe? Is our life sort of fated to go in one direction, or is it something one tiny little change might change your whole life? That kind of a thing. So for me, this art it's a metaphor for life too. So looking at how we actually embrace the chaos. Okay, how do you embrace chaos? What I do is I really love chaos, but I also love meaning and order. So I usually start by creating a lot of disorder. I literally throwing the ink, paint onto a canvas or paper, letting it pool around on there, spraying some more stuff on top of it, and doing kind of whatever comes to mind. Sometimes I'm switching it up in mid project and just doing whatever's handy. So I try to wrestle out some kind of an image out of that chaos, and what that comes out in the process. I try to keep my mind really clear when I'm going into the process. I try to stay very open-minded to not have my own preconceptions or projections on it, on that art. To stay open to what's going to come out naturally. Okay, so here's an example of it. In this drawing of a wolf, I had no idea what I was drawing when I started. I just started with a kind of a blast of horizontal chaos up there, and then basically I start looking at it and thinking, what is this? You know, what's happening here that's good, and what's maybe not good, and but I put a lot of time into the thinking behind it, not so much into just jumping straight into execution. But there's some strategy or some thinking that goes into it. And for me, always the best creative moments are right on the edge of kind of chaos, and they're on the edge of oblivion, you could say. They're something that when you have a fear that this could go horribly wrong, for me that's the best time, because that's when I know I'm onto something good. If there's something where failure is definitely a possibility here, then I know I'm like got some gold or whatever. And if it's like going too easy and too smooth, then it's like, oh, maybe not, you know. So this is quite a rush. It can be kind of even an addictive thing, this whole chaos thing. I liked working with ink. I chose ink as my main medium lately because it has a dramatic impact, and also it's very difficult to control. It's the hardest thing I found to control. So when it starts to flow, it's not like shuffleboard where you're like strategically sliding. It's more like a whitewater rafting situation. You're kind of just like along for the ride, you know. My goal is to embrace this chaos and to convert it towards a redemptive or a meaningful end. So this is also how I've mostly approached my life, education, career too. A lot of years doing the opposite of business has eventually led me to find a really good fit in business, and my business, now that I'm painting half-time, my business is doing well, and so sometimes this idea of working backwards can kind of come around and lead forward. So now I'd like to show you a time-lapse video of my creative process in action, so you can actually see it. Brandon was nice enough to come over to my house and film this. And he also added some very crazy music in the background, so we might want to turn down the volume a little bit. I'm not sure. Is it music? It's a sound effect at the very least. I asked him to put like some groovy rock, like heavy music, and he was like, "No, we can't do that." So okay. It's a 2-minute video. Other art forms that I've seen using a lot of chaos to generate ideas include improv theater, jazz music, T.S. Eliot's poetry, and even some prose like James Joyce. And I recently found out that James Joyce actually coined the term chaosmos, which is chaos into cosmos. I thought I coined it there for a minute, and then it turned out it was him like ages ago. So these art forms are very spontaneous and original, and the chaos comes from these unexpected situations. So I don't know if you guys have ever noticed that, but say with something like humor, a canned joke just is never really all that funny, but a joke that happens in the moment in an unexpected situation can be very funny, you know, and that's kind of bringing in some chaos into the situation. And like for me, all these types of art forms that involve chaos, they're not an easy thing. They're actually much harder to generate, and they're actually harder to absorb, but there can be a huge reward in the sense that the quality can be a lot higher on them compared to like things like pop music, stuff like that. And chaos also actually informs science as well as art. I worked for a while in microbiology for the University of Alberta, and I found out when I was working in science that a lot of things happen where scientists are attempting to control all the variables in a situation, but realistically they can't control them all. There's always a little bit of chaos coming in, and that's actually how penicillin was discovered, through a little bit of gravity and chaos and stuff falling on the floor, and that's how they found the discovery of antibiotics, actually, and also lots of other discoveries in science. So in retrospect, we sort of put together a story saying, hey, we carefully planned that out and we thought of all that or something, but which then makes us feel smarter. But in reality, it was a lot of chaos. It was a big part of it, accidental, kind of serendipitous stuff. Okay. So I got a question for you guys. Okay, have you ever used chaos to your advantage before in your life? Can you think of a situation where you have? I don't know if any of you guys have. Randall?
Absolutely.
What? Okay, tell us.
I used to teach theater to schools.
Yeah.
The idea was we would actually, in a week, the entire school would build an original piece of theater.
Okay.
And the idea was we'd start with a theme and then head towards Friday with no idea what we were going to produce on that day.
Yeah.
Each day just keep chipping something down and creating something, working with props, working with story styles, and eventually we got to a show.
Yeah.
But we had no idea what it was going to be. And the schools always reported, we have never seen our school so insanely chaotic and yet so creative.
Yeah. Nice. Oh, wow. Okay, that's a perfect example. And we didn't plan that ahead of time. See? So there you go. That's a true story from Randall, a spur of the moment. It's all happening. Okay. So a major thing to think about going into any situation is what are our expectations, our presuppositions, and our beliefs about things. A lot of times our expectations are pretty lofty, and a lot of times they're working forward in a kind of a linear fashion. So we're thinking something like, we're going to build a house, or we're going to build a big company, something like that. We have very specific expectations, but these can also lead to be very disappointing if we're very attached to a specific outcome in life. So when you're working backwards, your expectations can be lowered a little bit, or even eliminated. And so this involves just like kind of the philosophy of letting life happen, letting ideas grow, and having the freedom to seize opportunities, reducing your expectations, and to let a kind of a richer situation flourish. So is it possible that by lowering our expectations, we could actually produce something better than we could imagine if we went into it with a specific agenda? Okay, that's the question. I actually believe it is. In some cases, I think we get into kind of a boring rut and maybe even cliches and things like that, and then that's when we need something to jar us out of that. I remember one time my friend Micah in the audience here from Lyft, he actually challenged me to not draw faces for a week. So believe it or not, that was super hard for me. So I started drawing animals and all kinds of other things. But that was a case where someone kind of came and challenged me, and I was like, hey, cool, to get out of the rut. Okay, so how do we use chaos to break out of old habits and to introduce something new? So this is the drawing that I made in that video, so I've kind of brought it along. When I'm usually looking at a field of chaos, I try to find something meaningful in there. Sometimes it's a face, sometimes it's an element, an animal, a building, could be a road, could be all kinds of things. And then I kind of flag it in my mind, or I give it a little nickname or something and say, okay, I got to remember that and try to not steamroll it later. In some cases, I'm turning the piece around while I'm working. I was spinning it, I noticed in the video there, I was spinning it a lot, so I was probably deciding which direction I was going to go in for a little while, and then I kind of settled on one. But so I think in some cases too, once it gets rolling, you have to come up with the courage to reject the things that are not working, or they're just not seeming like they're going to be a part of it anymore. They were there initially as a possibility, and then they have to be eliminated. So that goes in business and personal life as well. We have to get rid of things that hold us back from excellence. Trying to change the slide. And there we go. Okay. Oops. Sorry. So my studio gets fairly messy sometimes, and I wonder, is that really necessary? Or someone comes in there, a friend of mine comes in and helps me clean, and he's like, "Hey, Glen, does it have to be quite this messy?" Okay, yes, it does, because it has to be crazy enough to allow the chaos elements to come into the art. If it's too tidy and stuff, it won't be quite as good. So letting some spilled ink or pouring some stuff that spills on the floor, running out of a certain type of paint and having to switch colors to another one, all of that can work in your favor if you're open to the idea. And so, okay, so I'm guessing a lot of you guys here probably use computers to create graphic designs, right? Or at least there's some people here I know that do. I've actually seen some of you guys doing it before. So, and I do a little bit of that too. But honestly, I'm really skeptical of graphic design on computers. I'm skeptical of parts of it because I find it can get you quickly into a rut where you're using the machine, you're using some standardized tools, and there's not that much scarcity. It's not that much of a struggle, and it's a little too easy. And then, sure enough, the end result kind of reflects that. So I find for me it's always a challenge to not to settle too much into an orderly system when I'm creating art. Okay, I do not know how to get the slides over though. Oh, there we go. Oh, that does it. Okay, so art always reinvents itself. So I like to keep my drawing tools and everything in a tidy space, but that's about that. You know, I find if you've got the tools tidy, you can actually find them quickly and use them, but you don't want to get it into too much of a system. So this is my little chaos kit that I made up here, and it's like it's basically a portable kit that I can generate a lot of chaos, even in like a coffee shop or something. In theory, it could work, right? I've done it a little bit, but it can get a little out of hand, but. So how do we embrace chaos? So if you guys ask yourself, how do you respond emotionally to chaos? Like when you hear the word or when you think of chaos, do you see it as a bad thing or do you see it as an opportunity to maybe open up a new door, go in a new direction? This is a character I invented called Old Man Chaos, and sure enough, he had to rear his head in the presentation. He's a mythical character. I recently floated him out on Instagram, and a whole bunch of people, like more than 100 or some artists, did their own version of Old Man Chaos. And he's the bringer of chaos into our orderly lives. Someone even built a sculpture of it. It's really cool. And they're still doing them too. This is like a month or two later, they're still generating them. So. He even has his own T-shirt out now, which I'm wearing, and there's some in that gift pack there or whatever. For there's only 4 or something, so you might have to sprint over there if you want one. Okay, here's a recent example of. Here's these other Old Man Chaos creations. So these are by artists from all over the world doing their own version of Old Man Chaos. I thought they were so cool. They all had a different spin. Some of them went more philosophical and some of them went more kind of literal, or some were more humanized than others. Some were more like almost a god. That was pretty interesting. So I was recently we had this contest on Instagram to people adopting, it's called Visions of Chaos. So it's like to draw eyes that are full of chaos. And you can see what this very talented artist says about chaos influencing her drawing. She draws in kind of a super realistic style. And so for her, this was actually a push to do something like this. If you look at her feed, everything else is like very realistic. There's nothing that breaks from that until this. So it was almost like a breakthrough. So how can you work backwards in your life? Maybe you're looking at shifting careers, changing the way you work. One of the ways you can go backwards so you can go forward is sort of like the way I paint. So that involves you basically, what you do is you pan way out and look at the big picture and try to find out what's working here and what isn't. So what are the things that I love here? What are the things I'm really good at? What's kind of drawing me to it? And then you're focusing in on those things and eliminating the other things. So in that way, I think that art is actually a metaphor for life. So one example of working backward that I remember was one time I was at a coffee shop and I wrote down on a napkin. I wrote down like the word deadwear, which I just thought would be like a funny brand name or something. And I don't know why, but I thought when I first wrote it down, I thought it sounds really dumb. And it kind of sounds mysterious at the same time, like what a weird thing. So I was like, okay, I got to do something with this. Now it's like a puzzle or something. We got to do something. So I went and registered the domain for it, and then I started to think of what could this brand be? Like maybe it could be a brand that's mysterious, beautiful. It's a memento mori brand. It brings up the topic of death, but it also talks about how precious life is. So not a morbid brand or not necessarily like a horror and that kind of stuff. And so then I built that brand, and we actually made shotgun jeans. We even got on the 6 o'clock news shooting jeans and stuff like that. And it was a fun thing, and it was a brand that was created backwards. So we started that way from basically a ridiculous concept to working into what actually turned out to be a pretty cool brand. And I experimented with a lot of different printing techniques. And we ended up using those with some of our clients, our corporate clients. We used the same techniques, not the same art, but printing. So this is one example of deadwear. I'll throw this in the gift pack later. It's a medium. It's the battle of good and evil kind of thing. And it's printed with our tricky methods. You can see it better from up close. So maybe it's not a great time for you to make a big change, but working backwards might affect you little things in your day-to-day projects as well. In design, I've noticed that a lot of stuff can become a little too predictable, too cliche, and so maybe bringing some chaos in there can shake it up. Honestly, I don't know if this will work for you guys, but it might. You never know, right? Instead of fighting chaos, a lot of brands out there have chosen to roll with the chaos, and there are some brands now where they're getting smarter about that, where they'll use the audience definition of the brand more openly. They'll actually kind of embrace it. And like if someone says something about it that's catchy, they'll kind of go with that a bit. It used to be that brands were only tightly controlled, and they wanted it kind of only from head office sort of a thing. And now I think that's changing a little bit. So companies, I think, that can respond quickly to the chaos in the marketplace, they have an advantage. Basically, those are the ones who might succeed because they can take something that's powerful and kind of use it to their own advantage. This is a quote from Napoleon. I did a portrait of Napoleon blown apart, I called it, and it's like he's basically surrounded in a field of chaos. And his quote to me applies to business as well as to actual war. Okay, so a serious question is, in your life, when is chaos a bad thing for you, or when has it been really painful for you? Probably we can think of times where it's like, we wish Old Man Chaos was not around, right? We wish he would just go away and everything would go nice and orderly and smooth. Disease, hardships, confusion, pain, some of these things we kind of attribute to Old Man Chaos. And I know for me, having kids, they would love to have orderly rituals and kind of a stable, safe environment. They love that kind of stuff too, right? Then they also like breaking out of that and doing something fun to an extent, right? So knowing when to use chaos and when to not, it's probably a balancing act. So you have to decide how much chaos you're going to let into your own lives. So the main 3 points that I want to leave you with is, number one, don't be afraid of mystery and uncertainty. It's okay to actually revel in that and sit with that and be like for quite a long time and to not have an exact answer of what's this drawing going to be. Some of my drawings I actually have worked on for months, and I'm just sitting there looking at it like, what is this thing, you know? Here's a quote from Johnny Cash. This is a drawing I did of Johnny Cash wrestling his demons there. So yeah, if you can feel that mystery and you're okay with that, you're okay with some mistakes, some uncertainty, spend some time looking before you make the move and just wonder what's really good, like what's working here that we can actually use. Like with my art, honestly, I did not know where it was going. I started with an idea and now I'm kind of just along for the ride. It's fun, the discovery process, and I always feel that fear of the unknown or fear of like, this could really not, could fail big time, right? And for me, that fear is my motivator. Like that's what drives me because I like that element in it. So, okay, and then the second thing is don't be afraid to work backwards. So that's the theme from Creative Mornings. You don't always get where you want to go by following linear, orderly plan. So, for example, Columbus was not exactly looking to discover what he found. He was definitely going on an adventure, but he found something way different than what he was thinking. So I think we need to be brave in that way and work forward with less fear of failing, but also be open to working backwards and a more open-ended plan. I remember one of the hardest things I ever did in my life was dropping everything in Canada and moving to Thailand. It was really scary for me, a different language, culture, and everything. And when I moved over there, I had no idea what I was going to do. And my wife and I ended up starting up a new bilingual school over there, which is still going. And I had got to have 3 art shows. Even one was in a gallery owned by the Princess of Thailand in Bangkok. And it was so cool. It was something I would never get here. Like, it would have taken me like 50 years to climb through the hierarchies here, but there somehow it just happened in a period of like a month or 2 or something. It was really fast. So anyways, yeah, that was a case where I think I learned more there in living there for 3 years than I might have in Canada. It was a very chaotic situation. I might have lived even 10 years of my life in Canada and not learned as much if I was just doing the same exact thing that I always did and kind of sticking to the same. So, yeah. And then the third thing is to embracing the chaos and using the power of chaos, harnessing that to spur us on to greater creativity. So maybe chaos can be your muse. And honestly, I don't know about your situation. Maybe it won't. But I'd really like to know if this actually works for anyone else in inventing or design or in your companies. I'd actually be quite curious to meet and see if this chaos inspired you. So yeah, anytime if you guys want to meet for coffee or something, come over to my studio and paint and hang out and have a creative brainstorm, or come to Spark and see that shop. It's pretty neat. We have a printing shop and everything to print, mostly to print textiles. And so I've got, as Brandon said, I've got a big thing of branded items there. And I'm ready to, this is our last slide right here. So yeah, that's it. And opening up for questions.
So floor's open, and I think there's a lot of things to talk about.
So how do you know when it's done? Starting the chaos.
Okay, that is a really good question. Sometimes I just know, and then other times I'm like, I don't really know. I'm just looking at it like I have some that went into limbo and they're still in limbo. And then some, especially with the field paintings, I did some really big field paintings, like they're 6 feet chaos paintings, all just covered in chaos. And you really never know when they're done. Like, I mean, they've got hundreds of little faces in them and stuff, and it's like, you could work on them for another year or something, and you could keep fine-tuning it maybe. But yeah, I honestly don't know, except I do have, sometimes someone wanders through the studio and they're like, done, and then I'm like, okay, cool. I thought that one was still in progress, but they remind me that it's done. Yeah, any other questions? Yeah.
Taken one like too far and thought, oh, I should have stopped last week?
Oh, yeah, that happens all the time. So especially when I do these big colorful portraits of faces, and then, yeah, sometimes I take little snapshots with my iPhone, like 2 or 3 while I'm working, and then I'm looking back and I'm going, oh man, was that ever cool a few days ago, you know? And then it's too late. You can't go back. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Just something that the comment over there brought up. How do you integrate other people into your chaos process? Or
Oh, yeah.
like, how does that work?
Okay, so what we did when I'm part of this group, Arts on the Ave, and Christy is with Arts on the Ave and Randall, and so outside my studio, I'd set up easels on the street, and then I put up like black line drawings of some famous people, right, like Mother Teresa, and I did Carl Jung and Matisse and all these kind of famous people that I like, just sort of heroic people, and then I put on some splashes of chaotic color, and then we let everyone come up and paint, whoever wanted to. So we had all the canvases out. Like we do like 10 at a time or 12 at a time. And so little kids would come up, and they'd all just paint. Some of them are making it so-called worse, right? And then others would be definitely making it better. And then it's like you can take the worsening and redeem it through a little bit of strategic at the end. Like say someone put a horrible clashing color like a purple or something with some, and you're like, oh, that looks so bad, right? And then you cover 90% of it and then it looks pretty good. And they still have a part of it, right? Technically they were still there. They contributed to it. So then they come back and look at it and they're like, hey, I did that little purple thing. Yeah, any other questions? Yeah. But I'm part of this business club, and a lot of the guys are high-powered business people, or they're definitely type A people, right? Like they're pretty loud and they're really giving it, right? And when they look at this stuff, I'm not sure if they get, but they've bought some of my paintings and stuff and put them up in their houses, and they seem to like some of them, you know. Probably it's more to do with it might be more to do with other things in personality instead of type A. But yeah, definitely some people really don't want chaos in their life, right? They're just like, that is not good. Like I want like just realistic, like picture of a scene, you know. That's it. Yeah. What other questions? So what do I use for tools?
Well,
Okay.
I'll know more about, like, what about accidents where you're performing something where you're like, that's an unorthodox, where that wasn't the intention for that tool, that you're using it in a way that's...
Oh yeah, like, well, my favorite painting tool is actually spoons, and that's for painting with acrylics. They work super good if you want to generate chaotic patterns that look organic and that kind of stuff. So yeah, must have tried 1,000 different weird tools with ink and with painting acrylic, and then just certain ones I kind of kept using or whatever, and other ones I tend to get away from anything that looks like a stamp or looks like a recognizable kind of where, oh yeah, that's a pattern from that or whatever. I tend to really not go there if possible. But I use all kinds of tools, or big sheets of plastic and put stuff between them and then pull them apart and stamp them, things like that. And I even have a few top secret tools. I got 2 or 3 super secret ones that I haven't revealed that nobody can figure out how I did them yet. Yeah, and they're like to do things like this one here. There are really tricky methods.
So do you have some kind of like locked up bunker somewhere?
No, I just have my studio, and it's so full of junk that you would never know what it was. It's in there. It's all in there. Yeah, it's all surrounded by art supplies. Yeah, any other final? Yeah. I probably do. Let's see if maybe Micah knows. Micah, what's one constant out of all this stuff? Would it be, I don't know, chaos itself? I'm guessing.
I have one, actually.
Oh, okay, Randall might know.
I've noticed you are constantly captivated by
Okay, yeah.
That's a concept.
That's a really big deal, yeah. The personality and faces and even animals have it. I just did one giant buffalo here, but called Buffalo Jump, and yeah, even that one's got like a character to it, like a kind of a sadness to it, that I really like. But yeah, faces really, because when you see a face, you sort of think of all the symbolism, human emotions, all of that stuff, psychology, everything, can have all of that in it.
It's probably a good place
Yeah.
to end.
Thanks, yeah.
Let's give 'em a
Thanks so much, you guys.